The night was cold, and the wind howled outside Jack's small wooden house. He had been sitting near the fireplace, sipping tea, when he heard it, a faint knock at the door. At first, he thought it was the wind, or maybe a loose branch hitting the wall, but then it came again, slow and weak, as if whoever was knocking had no strength left. Jack stood up, feeling a strange chill run through his body. It was almost midnight, and his home was far from town. No one should be here at this hour. He stepped to the door, his hand hovering over the handle, listening. The knock came once more, softer, this time followed by a muffled sound that could have been a whisper. Cautiously, he opened the door, and his eyes widened. There, on the porch, stood a woman, or at least she looked like one. Her skin was pale with a strange, faint glow, her hair silver like moonlight. Her clothes were torn, her face hollow from hunger, and her legs shook as if she might fall any second. She looked up at him, her eyes large and glassy, and tried to speak. A few strange words escaped her lips, not English, not any language Jack knew. And then, before he could react, she collapsed forward, falling into his arms. He could feel how cold she was, as if she had been walking through frost and snow. Without protection, Jack pulled her inside, laying her gently on the floor near the fire. She was breathing, but weak, each breath sounding like it hurt. Her skin had strange glowing markings along her neck and arms. They pulsed faintly, and to Jack's shock, the light grew a little brighter when he touched her wrist. He grabbed a blanket and wrapped it around her, then ran to the kitchen to get water. When he held the cup to her lips, she drank in small, desperate gulps. Her hands trembled, and she kept glancing at the door as if afraid something was outside. Jack spoke softly, telling her she was safe here. But he wasn't sure she understood. He found some bread and cheese, placing it in front of her. She looked at it for a moment, as if she had never seen food like this before. Then she ate quickly, almost too quickly, tearing the bread with her teeth. Jack realized she hadn't eaten in days, maybe longer, when she finished. She touched her chest with her hand and said one word in broken English, safe. Then she tried another word, slowly, as if it hurt to speak. Kind. She felt something stir in his chest, a feeling he couldn't explain. She was alone, lost, and terrified. And somehow, she had ended up at his door. Outside, the wind grew stronger, rattling the windows. Jack stood and walked to the door, making sure it was locked. He thought he saw movement in the darkness beyond the porch, a shadow that didn't belong to any tree. His instincts told him they weren't alone out here. When he turned back, he saw the woman trying to stand. Her knees shook, and she reached toward the door as if she wanted to guard it. Jack gently guided her to a chair, telling her she needed rest, but she shook her head, muttering something in her language, pointing again toward the night outside. Jack realized she was afraid, not of him, but of something else, something that might be looking for her. Her glowing marks pulsed faster, as though reacting to danger. It was then Jack understood she wasn't just any traveler who got lost. She was running from someone or something. The firelight flickered across her face, highlighting her sharp features and strange beauty. Her silver hair shimmered whenever she moved, but her eyes carried a weight, as if she had seen too much suffering. Jack wanted to ask her more, but he knew this wasn't the time. She wrapped the blanket tighter around herself and leaned toward the warmth of the fire. Her eyelids fluttered. Fighting to stay open, Jack sat in the chair opposite her, his mind full of questions. Who was she? Where had she come from? And why did she seem so afraid of the dark outside? A sudden sound broke the silence, a low, deep hum, almost mechanical, coming from somewhere beyond the trees. The woman's eyes snapped open, and she whispered something, sharp and urgent in her language. Jack looked toward the window, but saw only shadows moving between the pines. For a brief second, he thought he saw a pair of faint, Glowing red lights moving slowly as if scanning the ground. His pulse quickened. He didn't know what was happening, but he knew one thing. If someone was looking for her, they wouldn't find her here without going through him. The woman reached out suddenly, grabbing his hand with surprising strength. Her touch was cold, but her grip was desperate, as if begging him not to let go. Jack gave a small nod, silently promising her she was safe here. Outside, the strange hum faded into the night. But the tension in the air didn't vanish. Somehow. Jack knew this was just the beginning, and whatever had brought her to his door. It wasn't over. The woman sat wrapped in the blanket, her silver hair falling over her face as she breathed slowly. Jack placed another piece of bread in front of her, along with a bowl of hot soup he had made. She looked at it for a moment, blinking as if unsure it was meant for her. Then she reached out, her hands trembling, and began to eat. At first, she took small sips of the soup, but soon her pace quickened. It was clear she had not tasted warmth in a long time. Jack watched her silently, feeling a strange mix of pity and curiosity. Every time the spoon touched her lips, she let out a soft, almost relieved sound. When the bowl was empty, she looked at him and tried to speak. Her voice was rough, her accent heavy. "Thank you," she said slowly. Jack gave a small smile. "You're welcome." She tilted her head, as if memorizing the words, then repeated them, a little clearer this time. Outside, the wind rattled the windows again. The sound made her shoulders tense, her eyes darting to the door. Jack noticed her glowing markings had dimmed now, as if warmth and food had calmed her. Still, there was an unease in the way she kept glancing toward the night. Jack tried to ask her name, pointing to himself and saying, "Jack." She hesitated, then touched her chest and said, "Riva." Her voice softened when she said it, as if it was something precious. Jack repeated it, "Riva," and she gave the smallest smile. She pointed to the fire, then to him, and spoke a few words in her language. Jack didn't understand, but her tone was grateful. Still, he could tell there was something she wasn't saying, something she was holding back. It was in the way her eyes flickered when she thought he wasn't looking. That night, Jack offered her the couch to sleep on, but she shook her head, taking the blanket and curling up on the floor beside the door. It was as if she was guarding the entrance. Jack told her she could rest in comfort, but she only whispered, "Safe here," door, and closed her eyes. Hours passed, the fire burned low, and Jack began to drift off in his chair. A faint metallic sound woke him, not from inside, but outside, near the porch. He sat up, listening, his heartbeat quickening. It was a soft hum, followed by a clicking sound, like metal claws on wood. Jack moved quietly to the window and looked out into the darkness. The moonlight revealed shadows moving beyond the trees, not animals, not human, something with long, thin shapes, gliding silently between the branches. Riva's eyes opened instantly, as if she had sensed it too. She rose to her knees, her hand pressing over the strange marking on her arm. The glow from it brightened, faint but steady. She whispered something urgent in her language and motioned for Jack to stay away from the window. Then she crouched lower, her gaze locked on the door. The sound outside grew closer, like someone or something scanning the area. Jack's instinct told him to grab his old hunting rifle, but he didn't want to startle her. Instead, he stayed beside her, the air between them tense. Through the thin walls, they could hear a slow, heavy breathing, mechanical yet alive. Riva's eyes darkened, and she leaned closer to Jack. In broken English, she said, "They look for me." The words sank into him like ice. Whoever was out there wasn't just wandering, they were hunting. The sounds outside lasted for several minutes before fading into the distance. Jack let out a slow breath, but Riva didn't relax. She stared at the door long after the noises were gone. Finally, she looked at him and said, "Danger." Not over. Jack realized she had no intention of leaving soon. And somewhere deep inside, he knew he wouldn't let her, whatever trouble she carried. She had brought it to his doorstep, and now it was his too. Riva sat back down, pulling the blanket tighter, her eyes never leaving the door. She whispered her thanks again, but her tone was different now, heavier. Jack couldn't help but feel he had just stepped into something far bigger than himself, something dangerous, something that might change his life forever. Morning came slowly, the pale light of dawn creeping through the cracks in the curtains. Jack had barely slept, every sound in the night keeping him awake. Riva sat near the fire, still wrapped in the blanket, her eyes heavy but alert. It was as if she had been guarding the house all night. Jack brought her more food, a few eggs and bread. She accepted it with a small nod, eating quietly, her gaze drifting often to the door. When she reached for the bread, the sleeve of the blanket slid back. Jack's eyes caught a strange burn-like mark on her forearm. It wasn't an injury, it was a symbol, dark against her pale skin. Around it were faint glowing lines that seemed to shift when the light touched them. "What is that?" Jack asked softly, pointing. Riva froze, pulling her arm back, her expression tightening. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then, in halting English, she said, "Mark. Means? Owned." Jack frowned. Owned. By who? She lowered her eyes. Hunters, she explained slowly, mixing her words with hand gestures so he could understand. She had been captured far from Earth, taken from her homeworld because of something special in her blood. Her people, she said, were rare. Their biology made them valuable to certain alien nobles. They were not treated as people, but as property. The mark was proof of ownership, a claim that she belonged to someone. Jack felt a wave of anger rise in him. No one should belong to anyone, not anymore. He said firmly, "You're safe." Here, Riva looked at him for a long time, as if trying to decide whether to believe him. She told him she had escaped from a slave transport ship that crashed on Earth 2 days ago. The crash was far to the north, but she had walked and hidden. She had no food, no water, only the cold and the dark to keep her company. When she saw the glow from Jack's fireplace through the trees, she followed it, barely able to stand. Jack now understood the danger. Whoever had marked her would not stop searching, and if they found her here, they would not care if he was in the way. Still, something in him refused to hand her over. "You're not going back to them," he said quietly. Riva's eyes softened for a moment. Then, suddenly, her head turned sharply toward the window. Jack followed her gaze, his stomach tightening. A shadow moved between the trees, tall and thin, too still to be human. Before Jack could move, a low, distant howl echoed through the morning air. It wasn't a wolf. It was deeper, stranger, vibrating through the walls and into his chest. Riva gripped his arm, her nails digging into his sleeve. That sound. "Them," she whispered. Jack didn't need more explanation. He grabbed his coat and motioned for her to follow. If they stayed, the hunters would soon surround the house. Riva hesitated only for a second before nodding. She pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders and followed him to the back door. Jack grabbed a small bag, stuffing it with food, water, and his old hunting knife. The air outside was cold and sharp, carrying the faint metallic smell of machinery. They moved quickly through the forest behind the house. Every few steps, Jack glanced over his shoulder. He caught glimpses of movement, flashes of light between the trees, the faint hum of machines. Riva seemed to sense them even before he did, her glowing marks pulsing faster after nearly an hour of walking. They reached a small ridge overlooking a stream. Jack stopped to catch his breath, but Riva was still tense. "They will follow." "Always," she said. Her voice was heavy, but there was also a spark of defiance in it. Jack crouched beside her, looking her in the eyes. "Then we'll make it hard for them," he said. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the wind moving through the trees until the howl came again, closer this time. Riva's hand went to the mark on her arm. The glow from it pulsed in time with the distant sound. They can feel me, she admitted. Mark calls them. Jack understood. The mark wasn't just a brand, it was a tracker. His jaw tightened. If they were going to survive, they needed to find a way to remove it, but he had no idea how to do that, and time was running out. Riva's gaze went to the horizon, where faint shapes moved among the trees. Getting closer, Jack adjusted the strap of his bag. Come on, he said. We're not stopping until we lose them. Riva nodded, but there was a shadow in her eyes. She knew something Jack didn't. Losing them might not be possible. Jack and Riva moved fast through the forest, the cold morning air biting at their skin. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves made them freeze, hearts pounding like drums. Behind them, the faint hum of machines grew louder. Chasing them through the trees, Riva's glowing marks pulsed stronger, as if warning them of the danger. Closing in, the forest was thick with fog, hanging low like a curtain. It blurred their vision and muffled their footsteps. But the hunters did not slow. They sent small drones ahead, sharp and fast, with red eyes scanning every shadow. Jack had never seen anything like them, metal creatures that moved like ghosts. Riva grabbed Jack's arm, pulling him behind a fallen log just as a drone zipped past. Jack held his breath, feeling the cold metal wings slice the air inches. From his face, his heart pounded in his chest, but he tried to stay calm. He looked at Riva and saw her eyes shining with fear and something else. Strength, determination. She wasn't just running from danger, she was fighting it in her own way. Jack remembered how fragile she seemed at the door, but now she moved like a wild animal. He felt proud and protective. Knowing he was her only chance, suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the forest. One of the drones had hit a tree and crashed to the ground with a heavy thud. Jack seized the moment, grabbing his hunting knife and throwing it straight at the fallen machine. The blade pierced the drone's body, sparks flying as it powered down. Riva smiled briefly, then pulled Jack to his feet. "We can't stop," she said, her voice steady but urgent. Jack nodded, swallowing his fear. They ran deeper into the forest, searching for a place to hide. The fog thickened as they reached a small clearing surrounded by tall pines. Jack spotted a dark cave entrance hidden behind thick bushes. "Here," he whispered. Pulling Riva toward it, they slipped inside, breathless but safe for the moment. The cave was cool and damp, with rough walls that seemed to close around them. Riva crouched low, her glowing marks dimming as she tried to relax. Jack listened carefully, hearing nothing but the distant echo of their own breathing. For the first time since she arrived, Riva smiled, a faint light in her tired eyes. But the peace was short-lived. From somewhere deep in the cave, a strange vibration began. It was low and steady, like a heartbeat made of metal. Jack's skin prickled as the sound grew louder. Filling the small space, suddenly, a voice boomed through the cave, cold and mechanical. "Return the asset. Human, and you may live." Jack's eyes widened. Riva's expression hardened. "They know where we are," she said quietly. Jack's hand went to the knife at his belt. "We're not giving up," he said firmly. Riva nodded. Standing tall, despite her exhaustion, "We fight," she said. Jack realized then that she was not just a frightened alien woman. She was a warrior, marked and hunted, but ready to stand and fight for her freedom. The cave's shadows seemed to stretch longer, wrapping around them like a cloak. Outside, the forest waited, filled with danger and unknown threats. But inside the cave, Jack and Riva prepared for whatever would come next, together, against the hunters, against the dark. The cave was quiet now, the echoes of the hunter's voice fading away. Jack and Riva sat close together, Sharing the small space for a long time, neither spoke. The weight of what had happened hanging between them, Riva's glowing marks flickered. Softly, like a heartbeat in the dark, Jack watched her carefully. Sensing there was more to her story, he reached out gently and touched her hand. And she did not pull away. Instead, she looked at him with eyes full of pain and hope. Slowly, she began to speak, her voice soft and shaky. "My home. Far away," she said, captured. Taken from family, she told him of a distant world, a place filled with bright stars and green skies. A world where her people lived free before the hunters came. She spoke of cruel masters, of being hunted like prey, of endless days chained and nights filled with fear. Jack's heart ached as he listened. Imagining the life she had escaped, he wanted to say everything would be okay, but he wasn't sure himself. Then she shared something unexpected. She told Jack she had followed him, not by chance, but by choice. When her ship crashed, she had smelled something in the air, a scent of safety. It reminded her of home, of the warmth and kindness she had lost. Jack blinked in surprise. "You mean? You came looking for me?" he asked. Riva nodded slowly, a small smile breaking through her sadness. "Yes, you are safe." "Kind," she repeated, her broken English more certain now. Jack smiled back, feeling a connection growing between them. For the first time, the fear between them seemed to fade, replaced by trust. They shared stories, simple words and gestures bridging the gap of language and worlds. Riva taught Jack a few words from her language, and he tried to mimic the sounds. Laughter filled the cave, soft but real. Jack realized she was no longer just a frightened stranger. She was becoming someone he cared for deeply. But the danger outside had not disappeared. Suddenly, a noise from outside made them both freeze. Heavy footsteps, slow and deliberate, approached the cave entrance. Jack reached for his knife, eyes sharp. Riva's glowing marks flared brightly, casting strange shadows on the walls. The footsteps stopped just outside. A voice called out, low and cold, speaking in Riva's language. Jack could not understand the words, but the tone was filled with authority and menace. Riva's eyes darkened, and she whispered, "Hunters." Jack gripped her hand tighter. "We're not alone," he said. Riva nodded. Steeling herself, "We must be ready," she replied. The two sat silently, hearts beating fast. Trust had been built in the fire of danger and shared fear. But the coming moments would test them more than ever. The hunters came at dusk, their footsteps heavy and sure. Jack and Riva stood side by side at the cave entrance. Jack's old hunting knife in hand, Riva's glowing marks shining brighter than ever. They were ready, though the fear in their hearts beat like thunder. The alien hunters appeared first as tall figures in dark armor. Their helmets glowed with cold, red light hiding their faces. They spoke in a language Jack didn't know, but their meaning was clear. They wanted Riva back, no matter the cost. Jack stepped forward, his voice firm. "She's not yours?" The lead hunter laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "You have no right, human," he said. "Return the asset or face the consequences." Riva's eyes flashed with anger. She stepped between Jack and the hunters, speaking in her native tongue. Her voice strong and commanding. Jack didn't understand the words, but he saw the hunters hesitate. A flicker of respect or fear passed between them. Suddenly, Riva revealed something that stunned Jack. She was not just a runaway slave, she was the daughter of a powerful house. Her family ruled a distant world, a place where strength and honor mattered most. Her capture was more than theft. It was a challenge to her people's power. The hunters lowered their weapons, looking at her with a mix of caution and fear. Jack realized this fight was about more than just one woman. It was a battle for honor and control. He felt a surge of pride and protectiveness. This woman, so fragile once, was now a queen standing tall. The leader spoke again. "We will return with reinforcements." But Riva raised her hand, stopping him. "No," she said. "This is where it ends." Her voice echoed in the cave, filled with determination and fire. Jack stood firm beside her, ready to face whatever came next. The hunters slowly retreated, their glowing eyes fading into the dark. But Jack knew this was only a temporary victory. As the night deepened, Riva looked at Jack, her expression softening. "You saved me," she whispered. Jack smiled. "I'll protect you," she nodded, then touched his hand gently. "Family," she said simply, for the first time. Jack felt the weight of those words. He was no longer alone, and neither was she. Together, they faced an uncertain future, bound by trust and hope. The night was quiet, but the air was heavy with change. Jack and Riva stood outside the cave, watching the stars flicker above. The hunters were gone for now, but their threat still lingered like a shadow. Suddenly, bright lights appeared in the stuff. Bright lights appeared in the sky, ships descending silently through the trees. Riva's eyes widened as figures emerged from the ships, her people. Strong and proud, they moved quickly, surrounding Jack and Riva, their faces full of surprise and caution. Riva stepped forward, speaking in her native language with a commanding voice. She told them about Jack, how he saved her, protected her. Her people listened carefully, their expressions shifting from suspicion to respect. One of the leaders approached Jack. Bowing slightly, "We honor you," they said, "for you have saved the daughter of our house." Jack nodded, unsure how to respond. But feeling a deep pride swell inside him, Riva turned to Jack, her eyes shining softly. "You are family now," she said, her voice gentle but sure. Jack reached out, taking her hand. In that moment, the fear and danger faded, replaced by a bond stronger than words. As the ships prepared to leave, Riva's people invited Jack to come with them, but he shook his head. Smiling, "My place is here," he said, "but I will always be with you." Before they left, Riva gave Jack a small glowing charm, the same symbol as the mark on her arm. "It is a promise," she said, "that I will return." Jack held the charm close, feeling the warmth spread through his hand. As the ships disappeared into the night sky, Jack stood alone once more. But he was not the same man who opened the door to a stranger weeks ago. He had found something precious: family, hope, and a new purpose. And somewhere deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning of their story.